Timeline: The Bolsheviks to Putin. A records of Russian defaults. London in 1918, Soviet innovative Leon Trotsky informed Western creditors aghast on the Bolsheviks' repudiation of Russia's external debt. Gentlemen, you had been warned. He reminded them that dismissal of Tsarist-era debt were a key manifesto of the failed rebellion in 1905. More than a century later, Russia stands on the brink of any other default. However, this time there has been no warning. Few predicted the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine to elicit such a ferocious response from the West, which has all but severed Russia from worldwide monetary and payment structures. These are Russia's principal debt events during the last century: 1918, repudiation. Just earlier than the 1917 revolution, Russia was the world's largest net global debtor, having borrowed closely to finance industrialization and railways. But seeing the Tsarist industrialization force as failing the running class, the Bolsheviks repudiated all foreign debt. They mentioned, "We aren't paying, and even if we may want to, we would not pay." And that was a political statement, mentioned Hassan Malik, senior sovereign analyst at Loomis Sayles and the writer of the e-book, Bankers and Bolsheviks, International Finance and the Russian Revolution. Despite Trotsky's reminder, the default greatly surprised the sector, especially France, whose banks and residents suffered massive losses. Investors didn't take it severely because they thought it'd be so self-harmful, Malik said, estimating the debt to be well worth at least $500 billion at 2020 fees and in all likelihood more. It took until the mid-1980s for Moscow to recognize a number of that debt. 1991, USSR to Russia. Following the breakup of the USSR in 1991, Russia stopped servicing a part of the remote places debt it inherited from former Soviet states. Andrei Vavilov, Russia's deputy finance minister among 1994 and 1997, mentioned the Russian Federation held around $105 billion in Soviet-era debt at the end of 1992, with its personal debt amounting to $2.8 billion. For accepting the inherited debt, the Paris Club regarded Russia as a creditor state, Vavilov wrote in his e-book, The Russian Public Debt and Financial Meltdowns. And as Russia agreed with the Institution of Nations to restructure $28 billion in debt in 1996, it changed into allowed to shift fundamental Soviet-era debt payments to the following decade. But with the economic crisis around the nook, it might take till 2017 to clear the communist-era arrears. 1998, ruble debt default. Russia raised very little tax revenue and depended on short-term treasury bills known as GKO to cowl expenditure. But it discovered it tougher and harder to roll those over and became soon spending ever-increasing amounts to guard the ruble. The extra the government insisted that it'd stand by the foreign money and repay its money owed, the greater traders concluded it became time to promote, said Chris Miller in his ebook, Putinomics, Power and Money in Resurgent Russia. A month earlier than the default, the IMF prepared a $22.6 billion resource package deal, but the market was expecting the statement of an additional $20 billion. Martin Gilman, the IMF representative in Moscow on the time, wrote in his book, No Precedent, No Plan, Inside Russia's 1998 Default. On August 17, 1998, Russia threw inside the towel, devaluing the ruble, saying it could not pay ruble debt and introducing a 3-month moratorium on a few external debt. Russian banks that had invested heavily into bills and had vast overseas forex publicity soon went below. 2022, a forced default through dire monetary straits. In 1998, Moscow made sure to keep Eurobond payments. Now it has masses of coins, however won't dodge default. To evade sanctions, the Kremlin is suggesting foreign lenders open Russian bank debts to receive payments in alternative currencies to the dollar. NANU's traders can in theory agree, however U.S. bondholders cannot, after a U.S. Treasury license allowing them to take delivery of Russian payments expired in May. Miller, author of Putinomics, stated Russia could fight teeth and nail to keep away from a Eurobond default. The officers at the Imperative Bank and the Finance Ministry have constructed their careers on restabilizing Russia as a creditor that may be trusted in international markets, he said. It's constructed into their identity to make certain a default doesn't show up again.